What's up, Shred Sexies? Welcome back. Death to the Fingers. I have no real topic in mind today. I'm just going to put the lessons on hold until my finger gets fully better. It's almost there. It'll be a week or two or whatever it is. Who knows? It seems to take a while. It just sort of sits at the same zone for a long period of time, but whatever. It's almost there. And I'm trying to openly avoid thinking about music outside the mixing thing too much because honestly, it's really grating on my nerves that I've been restricted for 3 or 4 months now or whatever it is from playing, and it's driving me nuts. So, mentally, I just need to turtle up a little bit here, I guess, and just be like, okay, I don't want to do that right now because it's obviously a sore point. But, a lot of people were asking me about, selling out and commercialism, especially in music and stuff like that. Do I think like classic rock bands like the Rolling Stones have sold out? That is, like, I guess it really depends on the band. Like, I never felt like the Beatles really sold out until later, like way, 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 way later. You know what I mean? Like, they never did anything that was really, designed to be commercially viable. Not like the total radical U-turn that guys like Rod Stewart made, okay? That's what I'm talking about. So there was never really that moment in the Beatles. They just kind of did their commercial thing, which seemed to be like, their way of breaking into the scene. But as soon as they got a chance to be like, well, this is what we really want to do, it got a lot more interesting. Not that the older music is, bad or anything like that. It's got some pretty cool shit there too. But the later stuff was definitely much, much, much better. So, you know what I mean? Listen, you don't have to be a Beatles fan. You can insert any band like that. But that's the kind of thing, is there you have the Rod Stewart effect. The Rolling Stones did the same thing. I mean, they're pretty cool up until about 1990, but then it just started getting weird. Like, first off, what they did to other band members with respect to controlling interests and getting paid and stuff, a lot of the people quit because they're just like, we don't get paid like you are. And listen, I understand it's a business and stuff like that, but if you came up, from the streets or whatever it is, and with your boys there, I mean, it'd probably bother me too. Oh, whatever, you finalize this stuff legally speaking before everybody else, and now all of a sudden you're claiming a right to it. That's without it telling anybody in the first place that you were doing it. I'm just like, that's crazy. So, I don't know, fame does weird stuff to your head, so does money, I guess. But when you get into activities like that, Megadeth is like that. You know what I mean? Like, let's be real. Metallica is so hard to decode from a band perspective because clearly, there's this weird power dynamic going on, right, between James and Lars and Kirk. And both James and Lars, pick on Kirk and stuff, and then they have the hired gun syndrome, obviously, because clearly it was the three of them. It was James, Cliff, and Lars. And then, of course, when they brought Kirk on later on after Mustang got smoked, the very thing that happened to Jason Newsted happened initially to Kirk Hammett, right? That they were just picking on the guy. You see that in the documentary. They're just really rude. Now, listen, it is what it is. I mean, I don't know, but that's what it looks like. And then Newsted complained of the same thing. And then obviously they just got older and stuff. They're like, we don't care anymore. But, when you're full of piss and vinegar, you just you wear your emotions on your sleeve a lot more. But, they sort of they kept together. Sure, they went through, whatever, a bevy of bass players and stuff like that. But it wasn't the same as, like, what went on with Megadeth, where you're down to, like, just one guy now. And really, there were two classic lineups, right? with the original lineup, and then of course the sort of 90s classic lineup with Marty and with Nick Menza. And that's just it. Like, I watched a little snippet with the Aussie stuff there, and I noticed that Dave Ellefson was actually playing in whatever the little super group they had going on there. And Dave and company were nowhere to be found. One of the biggest days in metal, and one of metal's superstars is conspicuously missing. You know what I mean? I guess you live by the sword, you die by the sword. But the real point here being is commercialism is like any other disease, if you will. It starts warping your perspective. So does it bother me? Not really, because I can separate the art from the artist. I can listen to music from the Rolling Stones and be devoid of the fact that they did, some pretty evil stuff business-wise to other band members, or, they sort of, whatever, they try to stay relevant by having Sydney Sweeney drive around in a car, blasting the massive bobs and all the rest of that. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, who cares? Like, the kids today actually give a flying F about the new Rolling Stones single. Come on. And the whole thing is just kind of falling apart. Like, you're seeing it now massively. They're starting to panic a lot because Hollywood's lost so much of its shine, I guess you could say. You know what I mean? Like, every aspect of it, not just music, that the movies is dead, right? Star power is dead. And obviously, since there is no real expendable money for the average person or whatnot, nobody really cares about going to the movies. Who can even do that? Who can just take a family of four to the movies and drop $120 now on a family of four? Once you factor in some concessions or whatever else, so you have to, pull the whole, we have a baby too, the fifth person that's actually full of snacks for your family or whatever. And hey, you do you, man. But you know what I'm saying? It's just out to lunch. It's like when I saw those $55 pizzas in Las Vegas, and then Las Vegas basically collapsed. And the political class are like, oh no, please come to Las Vegas, we miss you. I'm just like, it has nothing to do with the $50 pizza, right? Like, the product has just dropped down so far and so fast that all we really have left anymore is commercialism. It's a product now. It's not really about artistic expression, and we've reduced almost every meaningful band down to, this concept of just commercialism, a vehicle to create trends on social media, sorry. Right? That's all it is. Nobody cares about some rapper X. They care about the bag the rapper's carrying in the video. And then the people in the real world are so, inured into this fantasy. They're like, I'm basically that main character now carrying this bag. I've got the same energy. You know what I mean? It's not about just being a rock star in the 70s and the 80s. A lot of ways was just rebelling against corporate culture. It was the people being like, I don't want to conform to the 9 to 5. The rebels, right? Who were the pioneers, man? Yeah, the pioneers that came, they started the towns, they whatever, made them livable to a certain degree, and then when the money started to flow in from the entrepreneurs that came next, the people are like, hey, look, there's natural resources here, and there's other things that we can start to make money on. And then they started to build up the town even more. And then, of course, at the very end, it's the rich that show up, or whatever else, the powerful, the influential, and then they just basically move in, right? But the pioneers, those are the people that show up first and cut down the forest and make a beachhead and then explore the entirety of the country. They just keep heading west. That's rock stars from the 70s and 80s. They're vagabonds in a lot of ways, until essentially, the advent of things like rap, where the musician stuff was kind of irrelevant because now you could just grab somebody else's music and just use that for your backbeat and stuff. I actually heard the original sort of drum beat there, that one that is so ubiquitous in rap, that doon doon taka 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 taka, right? It's just like everywhere. I actually heard the original one that they ripped in the song just recently. I was just like, wow. It's just this one little break where he's doing that and they just took that and ran with it. I was thinking 50 years of music has been built off like this 4 or 6 second clip or whatever it is, man. It's just unbelievable. Awesome. Anyways, you see what I'm saying? It's just like we kind of destroyed all of the creative necessity, and honestly, it was a balance. There's always going to be the need for like what I call consumable art, meaning you don't have to think about it. It's just stuff you like. Van Helsing is a movie that's consumable art. It's not good. It's basically cringy as hell, but it's entertaining, right? In all the wrong ways. And for some reason, we love that if you're into stuff like that. And everybody has their own guilty pleasure, whatever that is. And so there are, dozens and hundreds of thousands of examples like that with music and movies and everything else, books. You could read War and Peace, or you can read 50 Shades of Grey, It really depends on, what your mood is, so to speak. But that's the issue right there is that we just made 50 Shades of Grey the only thing that's available now. So all art conforms to this worthless standard. There is no gravitas anymore. There is no more War and Peace to sort of hold up next to this other product and be like, well, have you considered this? Right? And that's why you're seeing the entire thing collapse into just merely commercialism. And I don't even think that's going to last, obviously. I mean, I mentioned it before, like, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, that Live Nation and Ticketmaster and all of that stuff were moving into basically, whatever, corner the market with respect to live acts. And then you saw just this week, I thought it was, or I'm pretty sure it was, maybe it was last week, the CEO talking about, how concert tickets aren't expensive enough and how the cost is going to go up. And there's a huge lawsuit against them right now where Ticketmaster was colluding with the scalpers so that they could basically get kickbacks when they would sell the tickets at, hundreds of % above market rate. So when you're dealing with a corporation like that, that's not really going to see any serious sort of rebuke from the courts. They're going to get hit with a marginal fine that'll be nothing. I mean, this is the same playbook that the pharmacy companies pull. They put out some crazy drug and stuff like that. They're like, oh yeah, no, it's fine. And then things go bad and they get sued. But the fine that they have to pay for, causing the damage in the first place in the courts is way less than the money they made from selling the product in the first place. It's like politicians. They just wait you out. In January, it was like everybody was like, we want to see the Epstein list. And by like October, you'd be lucky if you even see a picture of Jeffrey Epstein in the social media cycle. Look at how fast they erased that Irina person from Ukraine that got ended on the public transportation. And there are dozens of situations like that. The hurricane in North Carolina or whatever happened. The flooding in Texas. Remember East Palestine? That crazy chemical disaster? I saw pictures. They tried to basically scrub the internet of that picture. Man, I had to go deep because I was curious. And I was just like, East Palestine train derailment. Nothing almost. I'm just like, what? It's crazy, man. Now, maybe it's just my search engine, but I thought that was strange. Anyways, you know what I mean? Like all of this stuff just shows up and disappears. Somebody was talking about the Las Vegas one. I've talked about that lots of times because it's really the first time when you saw something that was so out there You're just like, that's not real. Then the next time was in Hawaii with the Lahaina stuff. I'm just like, there's something so weird here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not making any implications at all. And that's just it. We live in this weird world now where it's like a super fluid, you know? You can't tell up from down, left from right, you know, east from west, north from south, whatever. It just, you just end up getting spun around because nothing makes sense anymore. And that ideology, if you will, of insanity is just now metastasized into everything. The music industry doesn't make any sense anymore. Like, I saw a video, I was just like, not only did the music not make sense in any way, shape, or form, I'm like, this is so, it's anti-music. You know what I mean? It's mocking music. But then the video itself, you remember in the old days we had like real people pretending to be Sims from the video game The Sims, and like the 90s we used to make videos like that. Well, now these people basically look like more realistic versions of that, but it's real. You know what I mean? I was just like, wow, just the imagery itself, the people themselves, what they'd done to themselves was so crazy. I saw a video yesterday, same thing, of people doing plastic surgery or other cosmetic enhancements, if you want to call it, to themselves. And I'm just like looking at them. I'm like, why did you do that? You know what I mean? Like, it was just so out there. I could not comprehend. So I think that kind of ties into the big picture here about the consumerism, the commercialism, and, you know, the death of art to a certain degree. Like, you can still find good music. You can still find really interesting and innovative bands. There's tons of them all over the place. The problem is that it's so hard to sift through so much of the trash and dross and garbage. And that's just it. Like, even a lot of the previously sort of like well-respected labels have like turned to this absolute trash sort of output. I'm just like, I wouldn't buy this. You know what I mean? There's been like maybe 3 times this year where I listened to a new band. I was like, yeah, that's punishing. That's good. That's it. 3. The rest of it, and that's hundreds of them, because I'm listening to the production to be like, well, where do I match up with respect to something like this? You know what I mean? Better, worse, the same, you know, different. What's my impression? So, you know what I mean? But that's just it. They were just like, no, listen to like 30 seconds, be like, it's well recorded or not. And then be like, next, you know what I'm saying? Not actually sit there and listen to the whole song. And I bet you at least 2 of the songs were from bands that were always great. So, you know, there may have been 3 or 4 bands in there total that were new of the hundreds that were actually putting out something that'd be considered to be worth listening to, because there's actually something kind of new there. You know what I mean? I listened to the new Dream Theater and stuff, and I had that exact same feeling. I felt a little bit of sadness, actually, because, you know, they were such a huge influence on me in my younger years, especially around the images and words stuff. And, you know, they were just such a breath of fresh air and stuff. And then I listened to the latest output, and don't get me wrong, they're still one of the greatest bands of all time. And this is just coming from a diehard fan that loves the band and stuff. But I just felt this incredibly overwhelming sense of disappointment. You know what I mean? It's so tamed down now. It's like AOR Dream Theater. I'm like, where's the train of thought years, boys? And maybe that still exists in little splurts here and there. But overall, I was just like, nah, I just not feeling it. You know what I mean? And that's just it. I guess the bands changed and stuff like that. They want to explore different types of music, and they go through different stages of life. Maybe they're just like, look, man, we're really chill right now. So it's kind of hard to summon up the rage or whatever it is to make an aggressive album. But at the same time, for a long time fan and stuff like that, you've been doing kind of circling this target for quite some time, and it needs to change massively. I would have the same probable argument with Symphony X. They need to change up their sound a bit, do something completely radically different. And I've seen bands do it and do it successfully. So it's not that it can't be done. It's just a question of, can you sort of reinvent the wheel a little bit to portray yourself slightly differently so that you can rekindle that creative fire? And that's really what's missing is that unfortunately the bands, and I think a lot of times they're probably pushed into these decisions by the label and by their representation to be like, don't change. Why are you trying to reinvent the wheel in the first place? It might flop, the all deadly sort of what if scenario. But still, that just kills it. You know what I mean? It just kills it. I'll leave it at this. There's always been that saying, the story, if you will, that Frank Zappa put out. He's like, back in our day, some big fat dude chomping on a cigar. He had a lot of money. And they'd put on some weird album, and he'd be like, I don't know, put it out. We'll see what happens. You know what I mean? And then it goes on to be like, the Frank Zappa band, whatever, and it becomes legendary and spawns guys like Steve Vai and stuff like that, who've played on thousands of recordings. One of the most prolific musicians of all time, especially within the recording age. Not to mention an absolute icon of the guitar, you know what I mean? Like one of the most recognized people associated with the instrument in and of itself. Just, it's like Steve Vai and guitar, they're like these two inseparable sort of ideas. Well, we wouldn't have that if it wasn't for Frank Zappa, and we wouldn't have Frank Zappa if it wasn't for some guy sitting in an office being like, I have no idea, just put it out, see how it goes. And probably some of them were a hit and some of them were a miss. Tom Petty's another one. He's had some bombs, and then all of a sudden he releases some of the most badass music of all time. Now, listen, I'm not a huge fan of these guys and stuff like that, but I respect the fact that, you know what I mean? Given enough time, given the right sort of environment, given, enough time for the band to gel and have some good times on the road and stuff, and just really, start to work together as a team, can yield some insane results. The Doobie Brothers is another band like that. That's just like, it doesn't matter what incarnation of the band you have. It's just, and then all the people that it spawned after the fact. Same thing with Steely Dan. You're just like, man, you know what I mean? Where are those bands now? Are we trying to compare the guys that came out of Steely Dan and all the music that spawned out from that whole scene right there to like Kanye West? We've basically almost all but forgotten now, including his music. Remember when nobody actually thought that he'd ever sort of like be yesterday's news? Like, no doubt in next year it'll be like Kanye walking around naked in a ski mask or something like that just to get the limelight again, but it's over. Nobody's talking about his music. Eminem's another one. There's the scene is littered with people and bands like that for about 5 to 10 years are like literally all we can talk about, and they're like the biggest revolution in music. I remember when people were like fawning over Eminem or whatever his name is, and now all of a sudden it's like, who? You know what I mean? People still talk about Led Zeppelin, man. They still talk about Queen. Those bands still get millions and millions of views and plays and stuff like that. Are you going to be able to say that these other people are going to be getting that in another 5 or 10 years? I don't think so. I mean, even the heyday of that stuff now is starting to wear thin because it's just been copied so many times. Again, casualty of commercialism. So I don't blame the bands. They got to operate within this sort of caustic environment where they're forced to choose between the artistic output and business considerations. But there is definitely some blame to be spread around by people being overly materialistic and converting the whole idea of being a musician into some sort of job that can be used to create illusory sort of fantasy worlds for, the less intellectually endowed individuals to basically take up residence. You know, they just live fantasies too. Well, if I have this bag, I'll be as cool as rapper X. If I buy this car, I'll get as many chicks as this pop star or whatever it is. You know, who knows? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's just been the study of music itself, the intricacy, the mystery of music. I could care less about the other stuff. You know what I mean? I hate the other stuff. The only part I like is making the music and then mixing it and doing the creative process afterwards, because it's basically kind of like the same thing, but it's like polishing it up. You know what I mean? So there's lots of blame to go around, but you know, from what I can see, it's just like I said, everything's kind of grinding to a halt. You'll know right away as soon as the big bands like Priest and Maiden and the older thrasher ones, like obviously Megadeth's done, Metallica soon is going to be done. Once they all pack it in, they're gone. The whole scene that they spawned from, and really came just before that in the 70s, the whole mega studio or stadium tours and all this kind of stuff, that'll die too. It was an era, just like the AM radio and you know what I mean, and whatever else, any other social trends, Rubik's cubes and all the rest. We had a 30-year run, and now it's over, and it'll just start breaking up. And you'll still have bands that can get bankrolled to go do world tours and stuff like that. But the Beyonce world tour was not a world tour. It was United States, maybe one stop in Canada, maybe, and some stops in Europe. And that's it. That's the world tour. So it's basically over. And since nobody drinks anymore and nobody goes to the bar anymore, that scene will die too. And then overall music will go sort of into you know, like a bit of a downturn, I guess, until it gets revived again, which is part of the process, honestly. That's just it. It's part of the process. You're not going to be able to get away from stuff like this because it is what it is. Right? But I don't think you can blame the bands. And also on top of that, most of the lion's share of the blame goes towards, you know, the corporate interests, the moneyed interests. They just don't know how to temper their greed with, you know, the reality of art. So if they could be like, there is a point where enough is enough, and instead just concentrate on keeping these people happy and healthy and stuff like that, to see what they can actually release onto the world, something phenomenal or fantastic. They exploit them. You know, they see them as something to, you know, get something from. It's just sad, really. You know, and that's why nobody really wants to seriously do music anymore, because not only is it a dead end as far as the career situation, not only are you going to toil in obscurity on the internet because nobody gives a shit, but also you have to deal with the shark infested water of the industry, where it's just filled with people like that don't care about you in the slightest. They're just like, make me money right now. And that's never good, obviously. So there it is. Good times. I appreciate every single one of you. Hope you have a killer day on Thursday. It's going to be an amazing weekend. Get out there, do some stuff, enjoy life. Listen to those cool tunes. Pick up your instrument and play for me. Put out the love vibe into the universe and be like, this one, this lick I'm shredding right now, that's for that poor sap on the internet. He can't play because his fingers hurt. We'll see you in the next one.